Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and welcome. I've really no patience for the argument that the path to a better energy system means we have to accept lower living standards. Billions of people in the developing world have not yet reached the standard of living enjoyed by those who often make those arguments. The electrical transition offers them that standard not through sacrifice, but through a system that's structurally cheaper and more efficient than what it replaces. That's my starting position. Today, I want to make the economic case for why the E-flip is not inflationary and it's one of the strongest deflationary forces that can have the potential to act on the global economy. So inflation has dominated economic debate in recent years, and it has revived an old assumption that the energy transitions are inherently inflationary. And that assumption is shaped by historical experience because past energy shocks were driven by fuel scarcity, geopolitical disruption, as we're seeing now, and commodity price volatility, as we're seeing now. But the E-flip, the transition to an electrical dominant energy system, is built on fundamentally different economic principles. Rather than entrenching scarcity, it replaces it with abundance, learning curves, and capital cost driven deflation. And here's the core mechanism. So hydrocarbon energy is governed by commodity economics. Prices are set at the margin, influenced by depletion, cartel behavior, and geopolitical risk and supply discipline. Even with technological improvements, fossil fuels remain subject to recurring extraction costs and geopolitical shocks, such as we're seeing now. Energy inflation in this system is not an exception, it is structurally built into it. Electrification, on the other hand, replaces commodity economics with technology economics. Solar panels, wind turbines, batteries, power electronics, electric motors, they follow experience curves. As cumulative production doubles, costs fall. These systems are manufactured rather than extracted, and their economics are dominated by upfront capital expenditure rather than ongoing fuel costs. So most people don't really understand curves. They project the future in straight lines because that's how human intuition works. Steady, incremental, predictable. Nassim Nicholas Taleb wrote a few books around it. He calls it linear thinking in a non-linear world. And the cost curves in electrification are not linear. They're exponential. And by the time the acceleration becomes visible, the earlier movers are already several doublings ahead, like China. But once built, this system, the operating costs fall towards zeros. There's no fuel to purchase, transport, insure, ship around the world, or hedge. This single shift from fuels to capital fundamentally alters the inflation dynamics of the energy system. 40 years ago, as a child, I can recall the hurried international telephone conversations I used to have with my grandparents. But in today's world, in an unlimited world of innovation has freed bandwidth. And given renewable electricity is not scarce, solar and wind resources far exceed global energy demand by many orders of magnitude. The binding constraints aren't the fuel, it's the infrastructure, integration, and flexibility, not availability. So as penetration rises, the marginal cost of electricity during given periods of high renewable energy output approaches zero. It suppresses price volatility and it weakens the pricing power of energy producers. So when energy becomes cheap and predictable, firms optimize for efficiency and automation rather than hedging and inventory. And this behavioral shift cascades through the supply chains and reinforces deflationary pressure across the economy. It compounds it further at the point of consumption. So electrification doesn't simply substitute one energy source for another. It dramatically reduces the energy required per unit of economic output. It's more efficient. Electric motors convert 90% of the input energy into motion. That's compared to 20 to 30% for an internal combustion engine. Heat pumps deliver 3 to 5 units of heat for every unit of electricity consumed. They collect ambient heat. They don't produce it, they collect it. Electrified industrial processes eliminate entire stages of fuel handling, combustion, and waste heat. Less infrastructure is required per unit of output, and capital is then deployed more productively. And these efficiency gains, they compound and they create the deflationary effect. In the United States, average household energy costs have been roughly about 8% of spending, household spending in 2023, but they've been broadly the same level since the 1970s. In a fully electrified system, analysts predict it could fall to as low as 3 to 4%. It's not because of austerity, but through efficiency. So households consume more energy services, they'll have more heating, more cooling, more mobility, but they'll be spending less. That's certainly my experience with my heat pumps and my solar roof and my batteries and my electric vehicle. And this is a persistent narrative that electrification is a luxury of the rich world. Yeah, I'm fortunate, but the evidence is increasingly points to the opposite direction. In many contexts, the adoption of technologies is not driven by anything to do with climate, but by brutal economics. It's cheaper at the point of use, it's faster to deploy, and it reduces our dependence on imports. And this matters for inflation because it expands the scale of the transition beyond the OECD markets into what I call the most of the world, where most of the people are and most of the youth are. And so each successful substitution reduces exposure to commodity price volatility and shifts spending from fuels to assets. And where fuels are consumptive and price setting, assets are productive and cost declining. That's why the E-flip has the potential to become an abundance story rather than an austerity story. Abundance doesn't mean unlimited consumption. It means the marginal unit of useful energy becomes cheaper, more local, and less politically volatile. And the deflationary character of the E-flip is structural, not instantaneous. So during the transition phases, there will be higher prices, infrastructure bottlenecks, and material shortages. Legacy market design is going to be a specific barrier to helping us unlock the deflationary nature of the E-flip. There are frictions. We need to dig out and process 7,000 million tons of metals and rare earths, but they are not structural features. We need to dig up 60 times the amount of fossil fuels in comparison to run the same system for, say, 25 years. So once the Electrotech system is maturing and built, energy ceases to be a source of reoccurring inflation and becomes a stable input, more like bandwidth than oil. And by replacing fuel scarcity with technological systems, the E-flip rewires the foundations of inflation, which is why it's not just an energy transition, but it's a source of macroeconomic stability. That's what I want to discuss with you today. I'm glad you could join me. There's more information in the book, Electrostate. Many thanks. Take care. Bye-bye.